And welcome back. Today we are going to be doing graphing linear equations. So we're going to go through these with our y equals mx plus b equations. As you know, your m, one second, is your slope, and your b is going to be your y-intercept. So down here, for this f of x equals 2/3 x minus 3, your m is the number in front of x, so that 2/3. It does not include x, so we don't write x there. Your slope is the same thing, but as a fraction. This one's already a fraction, so we just carry it over. If it wasn't a fraction, we would make it a fraction. And I'll show you how to do that one on the next problem. Your b is the number at the end, so that minus 3. When we write it as a y-intercept, it has to be written as a point. So we're going to put 0, -3 in parentheses. It's very important when you get asked on your test, your bell works, your quizzes, all of that, what b is just the number. If it specifically asks you for y-intercept, you have to put the whole point, 0, -3 in parentheses. And then we are going to graph it. When we graph, we're going to start with our y-intercept. We're going to find and mark the y-intercept. So for 0, -3, we're going to start at 0, and then we're going to go on the y down 3. 1, 2, 3, mark your y-intercept. Then we're going to do our slope, 2/3. That's going to be your rise over your run. So we're going to rise 2, and we're going to run 3. So from your y-intercept, go up 2, and your run is always going to go to the right. So 1, 2, 3 to the right, and plot a point. You can find one point, or you can find 2 points, or you can get them all. But you have to find at least one more. I'm going to go ahead and find one more from there. So starting with the point I just plotted, I'm going to do my rise over run again. Up 2, run 3, and plot another point. The last thing you're going to do, which wasn't written up here, the box got cut off, you are going to draw your line with arrows. So basically connect the dots. So your line's going to go all the way through the graph, and you're going to draw arrows. Because linear equations, they don't stop. They're going to go forever. Just because we only get this little bitty piece of the graph doesn't mean that's all of it. It's going to keep going. That's why we have to draw the arrows on the end. So let's try it again with this one. Your m is the number in front of x, so that -3. Do not put x on your m. Your slope is your m, but as a fraction. So if it's not already a fraction, all we're going to do is we're going to take that -3 and put it over 1. And now you have your rise over run. It has to be a fraction to get rise over run. Your b, that's the number at the end, so that +4. Your y-intercept is your b written as a point. So we do parentheses, 0, 4, close your parentheses. When we graph it, we're going to start with our y-intercept. Find that and mark it. It's always going to be on your y-axis. This one's at +4, so we're going to go up on the y-axis to 4 and plot a point. Then we're going to do our slope from that point. Rise is -3. Negative means we're going to go down. Your run is always right, every single time. The only thing that changes is your rise. Your rise can be up or it can be down. The run is always right. So we're going to rise -3. So go down 3, and then we're going to go right 1 for our run. And then down 3 again, right 1. So you can go through the rest of the graph and do that, or you can just stop there and draw your line with your arrows, because the graph keeps going. It doesn't stop at 6 and -6 like this graph does. It's going to go forever. Perfect. So just remember, mark your y-intercept first, Then do your rise over run. Rise can be up or down. Run has to be right. Always go to the right. Okay, for the next part, we're going to be finding our slope and we're going to be given 2 points. So your slope is your rise over run. This just means it's your vertical change in y over your horizontal change in x. So that triangle with the y, it's delta y over delta x, that just means your change in y over change in x. So we put our y's on top and we subtract them. Then we put our x's on the bottom and subtract those. 1 second.
Second lunch, eat in cafeteria. Orange group, head that way.
So we're going to have a y2, a y1, an x2, and an x1, and we're going to subtract them all. How we get our y2, y1, x2, x1 is we look at our points. Your points are always going to be x, y in order. Same thing over here, x, y in order, alphabetical order. The first point, that's 1. The second point is 2. Just like they're written below, they were just really small, so I wrote them again. Then we just plug it into our formula. y2 is negative 8, so that went first, minus y1. y1 was 4, so it went second. On the bottom, we have x2, so x2 is 5, so that goes first, minus x1, which was negative 3. This is the one most people miss. You have to get that double negative. Your problem has a minus in it, and your point has a negative. So you have to get your minus and negative. Don't forget those. Put them in parentheses. And then we can just plug it into our calculator. You can solve it out by hand if you want, but we can just plug it into the calculator and we get negative 3 over 2. And I'll show you all how to plug it in. So with B, we can work this one out. We have XY points. Your first point is 1. Your second point is 2. And we plug it into our formula. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. Y2 is 0 minus Y1, which is 1. On the bottom, X2 is 0 minus X1, and X1 is 2. And then we can plug it into our calculator. So if we get our calculator out, let me make it a little smaller. So we're going to hit alpha, y equals, enter to get a fraction. Alpha is your green button at the top. Y equals is right below your screen. And then enter. And then we just plug it in. 0 minus 1, go down to the bottom, 0 minus 2. Hit enter, and our slope is 1/2. You have to make sure you simplify your slope completely. You can't leave it unsimplified or you will get it wrong. We do the same thing for C. You have X, Y points in alphabetical order. And you get first point is 1, second point is 2. And we just plug it into our formula. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. Y2 is negative 3 minus Y1 is negative 4. Make sure you get that minus in the middle and the negative 4. You have to have both. On the bottom, X2 is negative 6 minus X1 is 8. And we just plug it in. So alpha, y equals, enter to get your fraction. We have negative 3 minus parenthesis negative 4. On the bottom, negative 6 minus 8. And we just hit enter. Your calculator will simplify it for you, so you don't have to worry about that. The only time you have to worry about it is if you solve it by hand. make sure you simplify everything. So negative 1 over 14. Now, it doesn't matter if you put that negative in the fraction or in front. When you type your answers into the lesson, you want to make sure your negative goes first. But if you're just writing it on paper, it doesn't matter where you put it. But again, in the computer, make sure that negative is first. Okay, when we have a table, we can do those the same exact way. We just have to pick 2 points. We have 4 points here to pick from. We have negative 4, 5, negative 2, 4, 0, 3, and 2, 2. We can pick whatever point we want to pick. So I'm going to go with, let's go 0, 1, 0, 3, and negative 4, 5. Whatever point you pick, they're going to give you the same slope. So the top line, these are x, because that's what that says. The first point is x1, the second point is x2. The bottom line is y, so the first one's y1, second one's y2. And then we just plug them in. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. y2 is 3. y1 is 5, so minus 5. x2 is 0. Minus x1 is negative 4. So watch that negative and make sure you get the minus sign and the negative. And then we plug it in. So to get your fraction, alpha y equals, enter. We're going to do 3 minus 5 on top, 0 minus a negative 4 on the bottom. Don't drop your parentheses. Fix that. And then we hit enter. And our slope is negative 1/2. Again, if you work it out by hand, make sure you simplify it. If you put it in the calculator will simplify it for you. If you don't have a calculator app on your phone, if you have an iPhone, let me go to the back page. If you have an iPhone, it's totally free. There's an app called Calculate 84, and it'll give you this big old graphing calculator like I have. If you have an Android, it's called Wabbit Emu, and it'll give you the same type of graphing calculator that I have. So you can do these at home. Again, they're completely free, so you can download those. Okay, for the second table, again, you can pick any 2 points you want. It doesn't matter if they're next to each other or really far apart. For the last one, they were apart, so this time I'll pick some that are next to each other, like negative 1, negative 8, and 0, negative 3. We'll work with those. Your top row is x. First point is x1, second point is x2. Your bottom row is y. First one is x1, second one is, y1, and the second one is y2. And we just plug them in. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. y2 is negative 3 minus y1 is negative 8, so make sure you get that minus and the negative. x2 is 0 minus x1 is negative 1, so get the minus and the negative. And plug it in. So alpha y equals, enter, negative 3 minus parentheses negative 8. On the bottom, 0 minus parentheses negative 1, and hit enter. So our slope is 5. Now, sometimes they come out to whole numbers, and you don't have to write a fraction, and that's completely fine. So they can come out to fractions or they can come out to whole numbers. They cannot come out to decimals. If you get a decimal, you have to change it to a fraction. Okay, on the bottom, it says do the points 1, 5, 2.5, 9.5, and 4.5, 15.5 lie on the same line and prove your answer. So all you're going to do for this is you're going to find the slope of each one. If your slopes are the same, they're on the same line. If your slopes are different, they are not on the same line. So we have to check all of our slopes. I'm going to go to the blank page to do this. So we're just going to grab all these points and I'm going to go to a blank page. So our points were 1, 5, 2.5, 9.5, 4.5, 15.5, and we need to find the slope of each pair. So we have 3 points. I'm just going to label them A, B, and C. And we're going to do every combination we can think of. So I'm going to start with A and B first. So for A and B, write them. You have XY on both of them. This is your first point, so it's X1 and Y1. This is your second point, so it's X2 and Y2. And we just plug it into our formula. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. Y2 is 9.5 minus Y1 is 5 over X2 is 2.5 minus X1 is 1. And we just plug it in. So alpha Y equals, enter to get your fraction, 9.5 minus 5. On the bottom, 2.5 minus 1, and hit enter. So our slope is 3. So that's just the first one. We still have to check the next pair. So you can pick whichever ones you want. I'm going to go with, let's go B and C. So B is 2.5, 9.5, and C is 4.5, 15.5. So again, you have your XY point. The first point is 1, so we put 1s on those. The second point is 2, so we put 2s on those. And then we plug it in. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. Y2 is 15.5 minus Y1 is 9.5 over X2 is 4.5 minus X1 is 2.5. And plug it in. Move this out of the way. I can't. So alpha Y equals, enter. We have 15.5 minus 9.5. And on the bottom, 4.5 minus 2.5. We hit enter. And our slope for that one is 3 as well. Now there is still one combination we have not done. The last combination is A and C. So A is 1, 5. C is 4.5, 15.5. And we need to find the slope between those two. So we have an XY point. The first point is going to be X1, Y1. The second point is X2, Y2. And we plug it in. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. Y2 is 15.5 minus Y1 is 5 over x2 is 4.5 minus x1 is 1. And plug it in. So alpha y equals, enter, 15.5 minus 5 on top. And on the bottom, 4.5 minus 1. And when we enter, we get 3. So all of our slopes were 3. So because they're all the same, this means they all lie on the same line. So to answer the question, it said, do these points lie on the same line? We would put yes. It says prove your answer. All of this work, finding the slope, that's how you prove your answer. You just find the slope of every pair. Find A with B, A with C, and B with C. Find every single pair of slopes. You're only going to have 3. So down on that question, do they lie on the same line? Yes. And that proof is finding your slopes. So you just have to show that work. On the end of your lesson, there's going to be a page for y'all to add that work, for y'all to send in your work. So make sure you take a picture of it and send it in as your proof. Okay, for the next example, these are equations of horizontal and vertical lines. Horizontal are going to be the lines that go left to right. Vertical go up and down. So this first one, we're going to use the graph below to complete the table. This is a horizontal line because it's going left to right. Is it a function? To find out if it's a function, you just draw a line anywhere. How many times does it hit each line? Well, it only hits 1 time for every single line. So yes, it is a function. It's only not a function if it cheats, if it hits more than once. Use the slope formula to find the slope. So your slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we have to get points for this. We have our table over here, and we just need to fill it in. At -3 for x, I'm going to go over to -3, and where is it on my line? Well, it's at -2. For -1, go to -1, and where is that on the line? -2. It went down 2. For 0, if I go down to the line, it goes down 2. For +2, go down to the line, and it's -2. And for 4, go down to the line, it goes down 2, so it's -2. We can pick any point we want. I'm going to pick -3, -2, and 2, -2. So on your x column, the first one is x1, the second one is x2. On the y column, the first one is y1, the second one is y2. And then we just plug it in. So y2 is -2 minus y1 is -2. So make sure you get that minus and the negative. All over x2 is 2 minus x1 is -3. And we just plug it into our calculator. So alpha y equals, enter, -2 minus parentheses -2 and 2 minus parentheses -3. Hit enter, and our slope is 0. So slope, your m is 0. What's your y-intercept? Your y-intercept, you can look at the graph or the table. If you look at the graph, you're going to find where it crosses the x-axis. The y-axis. And that line hits down here at 0, -2. Or you can look at the table. To find it on the table, you're just going to look where x is 0. X is 0 right here, So your point is 0, -2. When it says y-intercept, you have to write it as a point. So we can't just write -2. We have to write the whole point, 0, -2 in parentheses. Then we just plug it into our equation, y equals mx plus b. So y equals m is 0, so 0x, plus b, so plus a -2. We have to simplify all this. 0 times x, that cancels out. We don't need that. Positive times negative is negative. So we just bring over a -2 because 0 canceled out. So your equation is y equals -2. On the same coordinate plane, graph y equals 4 and y equals -1. So I'm going to graph y equals 4 in pink. So when we graph, we're going to start with our y-intercept, the number by itself. That 4, that's your y-intercept. So we go up to 4 and we plot a point. Your slope is the number with x. There is no x, which means our slope was 0 because it canceled out, just like it did over here. Your slope is 0, so we don't rise or run any. We don't rise any. We just run all the way across. It's a flat surface. It's the least steep you can go, the flattest you can go, because there's no slope. There's just 0. Okay, I'm going to do the other one in green. So y equals -1. We start with our y-intercept, which is the number by itself. So start at -1. So stay on my y-axis, go down to -1 and plot a point. Then we do our slope. That's the number with x. So there is no x, which means it was 0. That's why it canceled out. That's why there's not an x, because it was 0. So that just means we don't go up or down. We just go straight across. Because your slope, if you were to make 0 a fraction, it's 0 over 1. So your rise is 0 and your run is 1. So we don't go up or down any, we just go over 1 and then over 1 again and over 1 again. So we don't have to rise. It's just going to be horizontal across your graph. So what's the slope of all horizontal lines? Well, the slope of our first line was 0. The slope of our second line was 0. The slope of our last line was 0. That's why they all canceled out. So the slope of all horizontal lines is going to be 0. It's going to be a flat surface. There's not going to be any steepness to it. Okay, for the second one, we're going to be looking at a vertical line. Vertical just means up and down. So they're not going to have any slant to them. They're just going to go straight up and down. Is it a function? To tell if it's a function, we're going to draw a line through it. If it hits more than once, it's a function. So if I draw a line through that graph, does it hit this line more than once? Well, yeah. It hits it up here at 5, it hits it at 2, it hits it at 0, at -2, at -3, at -4. It literally hits it everywhere. It's hitting it infinity times because it's on the line the whole time. Anytime you see a vertical line, these are never going to be functions because it hits everywhere. So is it a function? No. Then we can fill out this table. What is it at -2? So if we go over to -2, where does it hit the line? Well, just like we talked about with the function, it literally hits everywhere. So you could pick 0. You could pick 1, 2, 3, 4. You could pick 5.5. You can pick negatives. You can literally pick anything you want. So I'm going to put 0. Let's go -2, 3, because that'll be this point up here. All of these, the reason we didn't fill out this table is because all of these are -2. because that's where your line is. It's at -2. Just like the top line, the horizontal one, all of your y values were -2 because that's where that line hit on y. It hit -2 everywhere. So you can put anything. You can put 3. I can put -5. I can put +6. We could put 4. You can put absolutely anything. Then we use the slope formula to find the slope. So we have m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Pick 2 points, whatever 2 points you want to use. I'm going to go with -2, 0 and -2, 4. So the left column, that's x. The first one is x1, the second one is x2. The y column, the right one, that's y. The first one is y1, the second one is y2. And then we just plug it into the formula. y2 is 4. y1 is 0, so minus 0. On the bottom, x2 is -2. Minus x1 is also -2. So make sure you get that minus and negative. Put that in parentheses. And then we plug it in. So alpha y equals enter 4 minus 0 on top, -2 minus parenthesis -2 on the bottom. And enter, and we get an error. Now we got an error for a very specific reason. Let me show you. So if we do them separately, if I do the top, 4 minus 0, well, that's 4. But if I do the bottom, -2 minus parenthesis -2, I get 0. Now, if I try to simplify that, 4 divided by 0, everyone always tells me that's 0. It's not. It's an error. You cannot divide by 0. Dividing means you're splitting something up into pieces. Like if you divide by 2, if I take 4 things and divide them by 2, I'm splitting them up among 2 people, or I'm splitting it into 2 pieces. If I take something and divide by 6, I'm dividing it up among 6 people or into 6 pieces. But I can't take like 4 whole pizzas and divide it up into nothing. That means you literally made it disappear. That doesn't mean you threw it away. That's still 4 whole pizzas in the trash. That doesn't mean you ate it, because that's still 4 whole pizzas in your belly. This literally means you're making it into nothing, that it just completely disappears. And nothing in this world can just disappear. That's not how the world works. So we can't divide by zeros because we can't take something and make it into nothing. You're either going to eat it, or you're going to throw it away, or whatever you're going to do, whatever you're talking about, it's going somewhere. It's not just going to disappear. Anyway, that long explanation to tell you, you can't divide by 0. This is called undefined. Anytime you have a slope where 0 is on the bottom, you can't do that, so we just write undefined. The y-intercept, well, you're going to look at your graph, and where does it cross the y-axis? Well, it doesn't. It never crosses it because it's just going straight up at -2. So there is no y-intercept. So none. However, there is an x-intercept. If you don't have a y-intercept, we got to move over to x. The x-intercept here is going to be -2, 0. When you don't have a slope, when you don't have a y-intercept, these are no longer y equals mx plus b equations. Y equals mx plus b has to have a slope and y-intercept. If you don't have that anymore, these are going to be x-equal equations. There's no mx plus b to worry about. X-equal is whatever your x-intercept is. That x-intercept is -2, so I put x equals -2. There's no slope to worry about, no y-intercept. You just put x equals whatever number your x-intercept is. In this case, it was -2. So on the same coordinate graph, we are going to do x equals 2 and x equals -4. Now, because they're x-equal, these are going to be vertical. X-equal meant there was no slope and there's no y-intercept. There is an x-intercept. And that x-intercept is whatever this number is. So 2, 0. So we go over to 2, and we're going to draw a vertical line. Same thing for x equals -4. X equals are always going to be vertical, and it's not going to have a slope or a y-intercept. It's going to have an x-intercept, and it's going to be whatever that number is. So in this case, -4, 0. So we're going to go over to -4, and we're going to draw our vertical line. So anytime you see x equals, it's always going to be vertical. There's a little anagram you can remember. It is called Hoy-Vux. Hoyvux. This just means horizontal. Oh, I'm going to run out of space. Horizontal lines have a 0 slope. Those are your y equals equations. Vertical lines have an undefined slope. Undefined slope. And these are your x equal equations. So Hoy-Vux. If you see a horizontal line, it's a 0 slope, and y equals whatever that number is. Vertical line is undefined slope, and x equals whatever that number is.
Third lunch, grab and go, blue group, head to the cafeteria. Third lunch, grab and go.
Okay, for the last thing, we're going to talk about the steepness and slope of lines. So which line from the graph is the steepest? If we look at this, which one looks the most vertical? Or if you think of it like a hill, which one is the highest hill? The one that you probably wouldn't want to climb. Well, from the looks of it, it looks like B is going to be the highest hill. And we'll double check these as we work. Which one is the least steep? Which one's the flattest? The hill you would probably want to walk on. That wouldn't cause too much exertion. Well, just from the looks of it, it looks like D would be the flattest. Not because it's going down, but just because it's closer to being flat than the other graphs. So use the slope triangles to find the slope of each line. So for line A, we have little slope triangles here. What's your rise? Well, it goes up 1. And your run is running 1. So we have 1 over 1, rise over run. 1 divided by 1 is just 1. So your slope for A is 1. For line B, we have our little slope triangle. What's your rise here? Well, it goes up 1, 2, 3. And your run just goes over 1. So rise over run is 3 over 1. 3 divided by 1 is 3. Okay, C, your rise over run. This one is rising 1, and it's running 1, 2. So rise over run, 1 over 2 simplifies to nothing. That's it. It's just 1 over 2. That does not simplify. And the last one, D, we have our rise over run. So our rise, this line is going down, so it's going to be negative, and it goes down 1, 2, so negative 2. Your run, it's going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 5. So your rise over run, negative 2 over 5. Try to simplify it. This one doesn't simplify. There's nothing that goes into 2 and 5. So that's your slope, negative 2 over 5. So to compare steepness of graphs, we're going to find the absolute value of it. That just means absolute value is the positive version of your number. We don't use negatives for absolute value. So what's absolute value of 1? What's the positive version of 1? Well, 1. Okay, for B, what's the absolute value of 3? The positive version of 3 is just 3. It's already positive. For C, what's the positive version of 1/2? Well, it's already positive, so just 1/2. And for D, what's the positive version, the absolute value, of negative 2 over 5? Well, the positive of negative 2 over 5 is just 2 over 5, no negative. And then we order them from least steep to steepest. This just means your lowest number to your highest number. So the lowest number here, we have these fractions. We don't really know what they are, so we can put them in the calculator. So that 1/2, we can do 1 divided by 2, and that gives us 0.5. Okay, that 2 over 5, 2 divided by 5 is 0.4. So then we can compare these. We have 1, 3, 0.5, and 0.4. What is your least steep, your lowest number? Well, 0.4. So we're going to use the fraction 2 over 5. That's going to be the lowest. What would come after 0.4? 0.5. So that 1/2. What would come after 1/2? 1 or 3? 1. And then your highest number on the list is 3. So 2 over 5, 1 over 2, 1, then 3. Compare the steepest line to the least steep. So that just wants to know which one is increasing or decreasing faster. Increase or decrease has no, it doesn't matter how steep it is. So you can have a negative slope, like -5, and that still be the highest steepness. It's just going to be going downhill instead of uphill. So of these, looking at the absolute value ones, because we don't care if it's negative. That just means you're going downhill instead of up. Looking at our absolute value numbers, which one is decreasing or increasing the fastest? That means your highest number. That's going to be 3. And 3 was line B. So that is the highest. So we can go back and double check our answers at the beginning. Which line was the steepest? Basically, which one had the highest number? That was B because it had 3. Which one is the least steep? That one was D because it was 2 over 5. It had nothing to do with that negative. Only the 2 over 5. The negative just means you're going downhill instead of uphill. That does not change the steepness. So these two were correct. B was our steepest and D was our least steep. Okay, so y'all go try to practice. Graph your lines, look at steepness, find slope, all of that. Try your practice.